The Collaborating Conversation podcast is for avid book readers, book lovers, and authors. Listen to this podcast as we talk more about the art of writing, stories behind books, and the hands that created them. So stay tuned and enjoy our show.
Welcome to the Collaborating Conversations podcast. Today's episode is the Fall of Galactic Civilizations in Sci-Fi. Today's going to be an interesting topic. We're talking about Fall of Galactic Civilizations in Sci-Fi. So I think there's a lot of interesting examples in the sci-fi world, and maybe just to kind of set context. So when we think about the Fall of Galactic Civilizations, there's this concept in sci-fi where you have like these ancient species, or these galaxy spanning empires that at some point fell in the past, and then maybe the new book or the narrative picks up when the current characters are living in this this remnant of or living in a society that's based on remnant technology, thinking of like things like the Expanse with the ring builders, and things of like I
think it's the Forerunner series. I can't remember. I'm actually trying to look it up right now. I believe that was where Skippy was, the super artificial intelligent AI who can't connect back to the network.
Yeah, Expeditionary Force.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, and there's also Mass Effect. So like the whole premise of Mass Effect is just like the there's this technology, the ring gates. Not to spoil anything, but it's like, or not ring gates, but the Mass Effect relays. It's like technology left over from this ancient civilization that all the species use to get connected in the galaxy. So it's like it's a pervasive theme in sci-fi where you just have super advanced species, that dominates for a long time, and then all of a sudden they're just gone. So
if you think about it, it's an easy trope to kind of give your world building easy access to, they call it ancient technology. Right now, according to us in today's time, most of our science fiction, the ancient technology is like hyper surpasses our own. And I think that's an interesting world building way of building a mystery around it. Right. There's also the I'm thinking Stargate, the Atlantis, and then Atlantis, the Lost Empire. Now that's there's the Disney movie, but Atlantis has that kind of mythical thing of, Atlantis. Oh, but we should definitely do warning. This episode contains spoilers to insert list of massive science fiction shows.
I think one of the most interesting ancient species ones, at least that comes to the top of my head right now, is just because it's more recent, is the Expanse. Because it's like, if you think about the ring builders, they're the perfect example of this super advanced species that created this far advanced technology that we as humanity just kind of discover that almost wipes us out, and then that we're able to eventually start figuring out how to harness and use as our own, and it just completely changes like humanity and their ability to go beyond our solar system, right? Like it's
and the way the Expanse does it is such an interesting way, right? Because now we don't know all the theories of the ring worlders or the people who originally built it, right? But we know that their goal was to harvest biological sources to make or to build access to the network, right? That's their node in our universe. That's how the protomolecule was sent into space. But it's interesting how it wasn't discovered, and then once it was, it activated in the whole first book. And how was it the first book that because the first book was how which station was hit?
Julie Mao, he becomes the conduit for the protomolecule. Probably. Yeah.
Well, but which station was hit, right? Because it needed all the biomass.
Series
station.
Was it
right.
Series station?
That sounds about right. It started with Remember the Cant, and then Series, and then it escalated. But it's a fascinating way.
No, Ganymede. Sorry, it was was it Ganymede?
I don't think it was Ganymede. Wasn't Ganymede the one where they were doing the food?
Yeah, Ganymede was where the food is being made.
That's where the daughter and everything is.
Yeah.
Max, have you read The Expanse?
Or watched it?
No, I have not.
You need to read
until college, everything that I've read or watched was because I had to. So I'm fairly new I guess I would be considered a. I don't know. It's a balance. To some people, I'm a nerd. Other people, not so much. Right? It just depends on who I'm with and who I'm talking to.
Well, you are in the sense of you do technical work, right? Like your area of expertise is extremely technical, right?
Yeah, but I guess I was focused more on in the context of like sci-fi. Like I know a bit about Atlantis because I just think it's interesting. I've watched at least like 7 documentaries about it. I'm big into like. Actually, that's not sci-fi. Never mind. I was gonna say planes disappearing. Never mind.
That's how science fiction theories come about, right? So this isn't a galactic fall, but it's A.G. Riddle. Was it the pandemic? No, what was it? Shoot, dang it!
Like the Bermuda Triangle, for example.
Yeah.
Like, would that count as sci-fi?
I mean, it is an area where things happen, but I would say there's a lot of scientific theories more so than reality, but there's also a lot of books. It doesn't necessarily lead to, Pandora's box or galactic fall or having a pre-built, but I definitely think it's science fiction-y. Yeah.
But it kind of built on that Atlantis thing. So there was this Stargate series called Stargate Atlantis. And it was interesting because the take they had on it was they created, so there's the ancients, which were basically ancient humans that transcended the need for a human body. So they basically became energy beings. But they had created far advanced technology, and Atlantis had actually been this ancient city that had been built to float in the water. It was actually, I think either they moved Atlantis, or I think they moved Atlantis. I think it used to be on Earth, but they moved it to another solar system, or was always in this other solar system on this water planet. I forget how it got there, but it was this.
Wasn't it actually its own ship, and then they just kind of left it there on the water planet?
Yeah, I think it was a ship, so it was able to move, but they left it on the water planet. But it was like a city ship. And it was interesting because, it kind of speaks to this, as galactic civilizations progress, become more and more advanced until eventually like they reach some threshold at which they transcend the need for, technology, all the common things that we would expect or need. And they just become like some higher state of consciousness, some energy being or something that just they no longer need any of the technology that they've created, and they just leave it. And it's interesting because it's that's exactly what happened to the ancients and Stargate, and it led to like Atlantis being a city that just kind of sat there for thousands of years. And then I think they talk about it in like Expeditionary Force with the with the people who created Skippy, the super advanced AI, where they had all this advanced technology, and they just, I'm not far in the series, but you might know more, but they create, eventually at some point they know, are they still around, or do they,
I think,
or did they transcend or whatever?
So that's one thing I don't like about the Expeditionary Force. So one, it's 14 books. I believe I'm only 7 books. That's kind of one of the triggers they use to continue to expand the story, is you don't actually know what happened. So I think I stopped around book 7, mostly because, as we all know, I ran out of credits, not just with Dolly 2 access, but with Audible credits. And due to lack of employment, I decided not to spend any more money on audiobooks, and it's an Audible only exclusive. But that's the one thing I don't like, is it's kind of a trope to kind of get you to continue to listen as you're trying to solve that problem. So we don't know exactly what happened. I think eventually he does get some access, but it messes with him, and you don't really, it's just a way to continue the story. So it's kind of the MacGuffin or the mystery box. I don't know if you guys are familiar with J.J. Abrams, just the mystery box. It's his way of telling stories. So yes, it is definitely, but it is an interesting facet of the story of, there's this whole mystery. One, how do you put Skippy or an artificial intelligence in its own quantum space and have so much computing power? I love it in the first book. This isn't too massive spoiler, where he's like, I need to charge soon. I only have 750 years left. And the rest of us are like, that's 5 times my lifetime. Can you, you're going to be fine. But to what Emmanuel is saying, I definitely think it's very interesting how there's kind of, in a way, us humans want to outlast or kind of leave the plane, right? That's kind of the Buddhist mindset, is to find, is it Nirvana? Is that Buddhism, or am I confusing that with something else?
Yeah, that's Buddhism, I believe. Transcend, reach Nirvana or whatever.
Yeah. So I think it's fine. I think it's very interesting that from a historical standpoint, there's some like desire for humans to kind of leave our plane of existence. However, I think it's very interesting and fascinating from a storytelling point to kind of have that, oh, this ancient society, you know, because we know parts of our history, but we don't know the full history. And then like, oh, our ancestors did all this amazing stuff, but then how did we lose everything, right? Because I think that's one of the fascinating things about history is, have we actually lost any technology or anything due to kind of like, oh, we don't need that anymore, right? I was thinking of the Bobiverse. If you wanted to keep data with you or you had a storage unit, how much storage media, not the storage media changes, but the connection ports changed, right? So in each of our lifetimes, we've gone from USB to, or we've gone, not even that, we've gone from floppy to CD to USB to USB micro mini, all this different stuff to USB-C. And if you don't have the right equipment, you can't back up data from, you know, a floppy disk anymore. That's becoming harder and harder. Or even heck, the last VCR was made, you know, like 10 years ago or something, or a few years ago. So this is kind of off topic, but I think it's interesting. Do we see ourselves losing access to old technology that could be meaningful to the future or something that we might need? Because, right, that's kind of how these stories start. Like they do something and then all their technology is kind of lost. I think, Emmanuel, you kind of do that in your book too, right? There's some ancient technology, or was it ancient technology? I forget exactly how the first baddie opens everything to the Enesmic plane, but he's trying to find like some old society stuff, right?
Yeah. So the book starts off. So the big bad Sagren in the first book is trapped in this special prison created by these people who didn't have access to like the magic of the universe or the Enesmic energy, and so they had to come up with some way to trap Sagren because they couldn't defeat it, and so they imprison it in this ingenious prison essentially that was feeding off of its own energy. So it cut off its connection to the Enesmic plane and then was fueled by its own Enesmic energy. So it couldn't use Enesmic energy to break out of it, was essentially what it was. And so, you know, they accidentally unlock it, you know, when this like mining crew is, you know, digging on this planet, and they discover, you know, this orb, this, you know, dark orb, just, you know, in the digging site around this complex ancient ruin. You know, and it's, you know, this whole ruin had essentially, they don't know the reason for it, but in the story that whole ruin's existence had been to create this orb prison that locked in Sagren. And the only reason it got out was because, you know, all this advanced technology in that day that, you know, generated wireless power and other things, you know, in a way, you know, that was different from, you know, how that ancient civilization, you know, would have done things. You know, Sagren is able to get access to those wireless generators that are around it, you know, at the dig site, and use that energy, which isn't an Enesmic energy, but is another form of energy, to break out of its prison.
Looking for an exciting space adventure book, a romantic young adult story, and a fantastic sci-fi read? Get The Foundra by award-winning author Emmanuel M. Arriaga today, and prepare to feed your imagination with never-ending thrill ride.
And so it was an interesting thing because it's kind of playing with, you know, how they did things, you know, 500,000 years ago, and how they did things in the quote unquote present day of the Foundra universe were different enough that it was able to disrupt, you know, this ingenious prison that they created for Sagren.
Well, and that's, you kind of see a similar thing with like in the Expeditionary Force thing, right? All the other aliens are trying to find the artifacts, and Skippy's like, nah, this is useless junk. Right? And it's very interesting how you don't know what you have because you don't understand the technology.
Yeah, it was interesting. Something kind of going back to Foundra for a second. Shameless plug. I just got notification that it won the award for fantasy novel, for first place for fantasy on Top Shelf Book Award. I just found out that today, actually.
Party like a rock star. Congratulations. We're doing a press release.
Can we insert that?
Yeah, so I just found out about that. I got the email this morning, actually. So that's pretty cool. It's going to be announced tomorrow. Sweet. So don't tell anybody until tomorrow.
Well, thankfully it takes us to edit these episodes.
Yeah, first place for fantasy, which is interesting.
Congratulations, golf clap sound effect, and like the John Cena dun 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 entry.
Yeah.
My time is now.
But when I created, like, because Foundra deals with a lot of progression of time, right? And so you had Sagren in his first destruction of the galaxy that happened 500,000 years past. And one of the things that I was intentional that I wanted to do was, with that massive progress of time, there's not much talk or understanding of those past galactic civilizations outside of ruins. And the reason, that one specific piece about the mining, the only reason to discover that ruin on the planet was because, a mining company wanted to crack the planet basically to get its resources, because they drill on desolate planets, right? And that planet was desolate, like no one lived there, but it wasn't desolate, 500,000 years ago, right? Like it had been a flourishing, empire, a nation of, a species of people, but it had been wiped out by Sagren. And so like you can see like in the progress of time, like there was nothing there. It was just a barren husk of a world. I didn't want to spend too much time on, like, I didn't want to go down the trope of like having like ancient civilizations, that, they relied on technology, because in the Foundra universe, they're very technologically advanced in the present day. But I did want to talk about, the species of the past in some way, and mainly around the vein of like the devastation, like they got all those species, all those galactic empires 500,000 years ago no longer exist because they were so damaged and devastated by Sagren that they weren't able to survive, right? So even though they beat Sagren, and even though they won in the end, Sagren had done so much damage to the galactic economy, to all the different species, had wiped out so many homeworlds, that even though there were species that survived, they weren't able to ultimately survive to present day because of the damage that was done. And so I think that's, it kind of speaks to that, some apocalypse event, right? Where it's just like some catalyst, something happens. And I think we see this in every instance of sci-fi where it talks about this, some apocalypse event that wipes out, that ancient civilization, that ancient thing so long ago, where everyone's just trying to figure out like, oh, if they were so advanced, if they were so great, why are they no longer here?
Well, and that brings up an interesting question, right? Because at least right now in our current human society, we are kind of wondering, are we going to blow ourselves up, right? I mean, that's also another trope in science fiction of, after society gets to a certain technological point, they blow themselves up, right? They can't handle, the conflict internal conflict within their own races. That's very common in science fiction, that different, trying to figure out the direction I want to head here. Different, planets and different stuff. That's one of the things that some people are questioning. Oh, we haven't seen life or haven't exampled. Do we get to a certain technical point and just kind of nuke ourselves out of existence? Or is there something? Because I think that's one of those, I think the apocalypse genre, which can be kind of, would this just be the galactic apocalypse? Is that kind of an untestified name for this like galactic fall of civilization? Is very interesting, because in the low level, everyone likes, a lot of the people who like the zombie apocalypse like it because they like the idea of trying to survive and problem solving and using ingenuity and wit to solve problems. The global or galactic apocalypse is more of you typically used as like a warning, right? Like, I'm not sure how you decide to design your story around that, but it's usually like, oh, don't let yourself become too reliant on technology or something, because it might dumb you down or stuff like that. Depending on the trope or depending on what message they want to send, sometimes a message is also included. It's definitely very interesting to see how different authors and different writers and different shows use the galactic or some type of galactic apocalypse or some type of galactic tragedy to move forward the story, and also use it for that investigation, right? Because you need that, as we mentioned earlier, that mystery box aspect.
Well, it was interesting, and Max, feel free to jump in if you have thoughts. But it was interesting in the Expanse, because like the ring builders were killed by the ring, what do they call them? The ring space monsters, or the
is that the ones that are super doped up by the protocol molecule or something?
No, they're I forget the name. They refer to them as some way, the creatures that kill in the ring space.
Oh, which I don't remember this at all.
So whenever ring builder technology is used, it infuriates the ring ghosts, or I think they call them the ring ghosts or something like that.
Was this
But
before or after the 50-year jump?
huh?
When did they find this out? Did they find this out before or after the 50-year jump?
So I mean, they understand that something is triggering the destruction of ships when they go through the ring gate.
Oh, right. But
In
they
the
never
book, when
solved
they
that,
defeat
Marcus.
when they defeat what's his name,
Marcus, right? Or
Marcos Naros,
Yeah.
and they use that to defeat him and destroy his ships.
right.
So they know that something's happening. It does occur later. Like they start to understand more about those creatures.
Okay. I
and,
didn't know it was creatures. So that must have been. Was there a new book?
I mean, the series is over. All the books are out now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the last book was I have it on my shelf right now. It's Leviathan Falls. So Tiamat's Wrath and Leviathan Falls.
All right, I'll have to check my Audible. I probably will be buying. I signed up for 3 months free credits, and I'll probably be using that for Expanse and maybe more Skippy books.
Yeah, I got that email too. They want me back. They said we can't do it without you.
Well, so as a Prime member, you also get 3 months free. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm telling you, the email I got, because I used to have Audible and I don't anymore. Well, I don't have an active subscription, and they sent me an email saying that they were faltering and they needed me back to be able to survive.
I didn't get that email.
Well,
They need you specifically.
to each his own, I guess.
The quarterly profits hang on you and you alone. You got to spend more max.
The amount of books I bought, I mean, I went ham on Skippy on the what's it called? The Expeditionary Force.
Expeditionary Force, yeah.
Words are hard. I went ham. I bought almost half the series in like a week.
Something that's interesting though, like the ring ghosts, we'll call them that for now, but they wipe out. They're the ones who killed the ring builders.
Well, because it's a virus, right?
Huh?
Wasn't it like some type of virus that hit the ring worlders or something, or the builders?
I won't spoil it for you because it's a major spoiler, but they basically just shut off the entire species.
Oh,
yeah.
The power will do that.
Yeah, and they do it in a very ingenious way. And what's interesting is when humanity starts to mess around with their technology, they try to do it to humanity, but humanity is different than the ring space than the ring builders, and so the ring ghosts basically try to figure out how to shut off all the humans across the galaxy, right? Because that's how they work, and they experiment, right? Like, and so you see in different phases, like they will like everyone blanks out for like 30 seconds, like in an entire solar system. And it's interesting because they in the series, they're trying to basically shut off all the humans, and they actually succeed. They actually wipe out one of the entire gates, all the humans in through this one gate. They actually figure out how to turn off all of it human. So the humans technically lose, but the ring ghosts still see human activity going in and out of the gate and across other areas. So they don't realize that they actually have unlocked how to kill all the humans. And it's actually a defining moment in the book because it's just like, oh snap, like they've actually won. Like they figure out how to just shut off all of humanity, but they didn't realize because humanity is so different when compared with the ring builders, because they're not a connected consciousness, right? Like and so because of that, they don't realize that they've won, and so they're still trying to figure out how to kill all humanity. But it's a very interesting thing, right? And it kind of speaks to that point of like, you don't know, it's like, how one species loses or gets wiped out, how does that affect like the subsequent species, right? And we know from Mass Effect, for example, like, it's the Reavers, right? Like they are, they come and wipe out all of galactic civilization at, set times, like was it every 10,000 years or something like that, right? And so it's like, it's like that's the apocalyptic event for the galaxy, right? Like, and so it's and it's interesting, because a lot of science fiction novels, like once you figure out how it happened, then you're just trying to figure out how to have it not happen to you, and that becomes like the driving narrative in the books. Like we saw that in the games and stuff. So we saw that in Mass Effect. We see that in the Expanse.
I will say I never played I played Mass Effect here or there, but I never really learned the entire story.
Oh, it's such a great game.
I've heard good things about it. It's just I was not a fan of the gameplay.
Why not?
It just didn't. It was so it's this weird RPG like turn-based stuff, but not really. Forget exact because it's a Bethesda game, right? And they had the same thing that has it's the same mechanism that's used in Fallout, the targeting system, and it just I don't know. It just never really worked for me, and I never really got that far. I've heard the story is amazing though.
Yeah, I think Mass Effect's one of those games where you just keep playing it for the story. Like the combat system's okay, but the story is really what drives it. But it's like an old school RPG gamer, right? So like, play through games that have great story that have horrible gameplay just to play the story, right? Like that was my childhood, right? And so it's like, so like for me, for Mass Effect, it wasn't too uncommon. Nowadays, like it's hard I'd rather just watch the video movie than play through like the game. But
one second. So there's book 9 is Leviathan Falls, and then there's book Memories Legion. Is that a different story or something?
I think those are like the side stories because there's only 9 core books, but he has a whole ton of like novellas or like side books that like go into more detail. I haven't gotten into the novellas, to be honest.
So this is a tangent of why I don't like Audible is they want you to spend a credit on a 2.5 hour book, like one of these 9.5 books. Like, no.
Yeah.
This doesn't work. Well, I didn't realize that was the last book, so I'm definitely going to buy that with my my one remaining credit.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Last book. It gives closure, but it's like, I think it gives closure. Like I would say, like it's a good end to the series.
Thank you for listening. Check out our podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcasts if you enjoyed the show. For more books and inspiring stories from today's authors, please subscribe to our podcast.